When most people spot a gleaming 1995 Washington quarter in their change, they plunk it into a jar or spend it without a second thought. Yet this seemingly ordinary piece of pocket change can harbor secrets that turn casual curiosity into genuine excitement. Behind the familiar profile of George Washington lies a tale of massive mintages, subtle variations, and the occasional minting mishap that can transform a 25-cent coin into a collectible worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. If you've ever held one of these quarters and wondered whether it's worth more than its face value, stick around. We're about to explore the world of the 1995 quarter, its origins, its quirks, and the rare errors that make certain specimens real conversation pieces in any seasoned collector's portfolio. Let's set the stage with a bit of background. The Washington quarter first debuted in 1932 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, and after a brief hiatus, it became the standard 25-cent piece for everyday commerce. By 1995, this design had been strikingly consistent for over 6 decades, making the coin instantly recognizable. That year, more than 1 billion quarters were minted at Philadelphia, and over 1 billion at Denver. A smaller run, just over 2 million, came from San Francisco as proof strikes for collectors. With numbers that high, you might think nothing special could surface, yet it's precisely the volume combined with occasional die hiccups that creates the most fascinating rarities. On a typical business strike 1995 quarter, you'll find John Flanagan classic portraits on both sides, Washington's bust on the obverse, and a heraldic eagle clutching arrows on the reverse. Composition is a copper nickel clad over a pure copper core, giving the coin its familiar silvery sheen. Mint marks sit just to the right of Washington's ponytail, P for Philadelphia or D for Denver, while San Francisco proofs bear an S. Most pieces display sharp reading on the edge and consistent strike details. It's when these elements deviate, when letters fill in, collars shift, or planchets go astray, that value jumps from pocket change into collector territory. One of the most sought-after mishaps in 1995 quarters is the wrong planchet strike. Occasionally a quarter planchet is accidentally fed from a different coin blank supply, perhaps one intended for a foreign coin or special issue, resulting in a quarter that looks odd, weighs differently, or even has a strange tint. These wrong planchet errors for 1995 quarters often trade between $150 and $500, depending on severity and market demand. The error might present as a broader rim, off-center design, or a blank planchet with no copper nickel layers, each creating an unmistakable visual cue that something went awry at the mint. When it comes to pristine, properly struck business issues, condition reigns supreme. Most circulated 1995 quarters are worth only face value, and even nice uncirculated pieces usually top out between $1 and $10. But at the highest mint state grades, MS-67 and above, values soar. A 1995 P quarter graded MS-68 fetched nearly $1,850 at auction, while its Denver minted MS-67 Plus counterpart realized over $1,200. Those six-figure mintage runs still produce a handful of ultra-sharp survivors that command serious premiums when they appear under the hammer. If you crack open a proof set from 1995, you'll encounter coins struck at the San Francisco Mint with frosted devices and mirrored fields. These proofs rarely enter circulation but can show up in collections or estate lots. A deep cameo proof, where the contrast between frosted design elements and mirrored backgrounds is most pronounced, can sell for $20 to $50 in average proof condition, climbing higher if certified with exceptional contrast. That's modest compared with business strike MS-68 pieces, yet it demonstrates how intent and technique at the mint change perceived value. Beyond planchet mistakes and top-grade survivors, the 1995 quarter produced a handful of more obscure errors that grab attention. One famously whimsical variant is the filled die error that yielded, "In God we trust," instead of, "In God we trust," when grease or debris filled portions of the letter G before striking. These coins surface occasionally on auction sites and typically fetch around $25 in lower grades, even though bids start at face value. The novelty alone drives interest. Another duo of errors appears when the collar or the die itself malfunctions. A partial collar error creates a faint line or blank strip near the rim where the retaining collar didn't seat fully. Combine that with an obverse blockage, where an already struck design from a previous impression transfers to the blank side of the next planchet, and you get a coin with overlapping, mirror image devices. One such 1995 specimen featuring both a partial collar and obverse blockage recently changed hands for upwards of $600. The overlap of those two mistakes on a single quarter makes it a standout curiosity. Die cracks, tiny raised lines on the surface where the die has fractured, are another category to watch. While minor die cracks may go unnoticed, more pronounced ones that span from the rim into the field can add $50 to $100 in value for error collectors. Some multi-crack examples, where the die splits in several places, have sold for $200 to $300, whereas an extreme broadstruck plus blockage combo climbed to $600 or more. These varieties require a keen eye, since they can look like scratches at first glance. Under magnification, however, their character as minting flaws becomes clear. To gauge whether your quarter is worth sending off for grading or listing online, start by checking for unusual edge and surface traits, misaligned reading bands, filled letters, or mirror image designs. Then note the mint mark location. Errors at Philadelphia might be slightly more plentiful, simply due to production volume, and compared to certified auction records. If you find a specimen that looks oddly blank, shows a ghost image, or sports an off-center strike, it's time to photograph it and seek an expert opinion. Even circulated pieces with dramatic errors can spark bidding wars among specialists. By now, you can see that even a coin with a seemingly ordinary face value hides layers of intrigue. The 1995 quarter's story spans from billions struck for commerce to a handful of misfits that slipped through quality control and emerged decades later as collectible treasures. Next up, we'll shift our focus to the 1996 quarter, another high-mintage issue that nonetheless surprised collectors with its own set of quirks and valuable errors. Stick around, because if you thought 1995 had secrets, 1996 just might top them. Switching gears from the quirks of 1995, let's turn our attention to the 1996 Washington quarter, a sibling issue that quietly produced its own handful of treasures amid over 2 billion pieces struck for circulation. On the surface, a 1996 quarter looks identical to its predecessor, George Washington's dignified profile on the obverse, and the bold eagle reverse. Yet when you learn to spot the subtle variations, mint mishaps, and condition rarities, that ordinary quarter in your pocket suddenly takes on fresh excitement. Back in 1996, the U.S. Mint was settling into the mid-1990s routine. The Washington quarter design had been in continuous use since 1934, after its 1932 debut, and collectors were gearing up for the looming state quarters program set to launch in 1999. That year, the Philadelphia Mint produced roughly 780 million business strike quarters, while Denver turned out about 907 million. San Francisco contributed about 2 million proof quarters and another 500,000 in special silver-clad proofs for collectors. Those staggering numbers make it easy to overlook the handful of misfits that slipped through quality control, and it's precisely those misfits that drive collector passion. At first glance, a 1996 quarter's attributes seem familiar: a 24.3 mm diameter, 5.67 g weight, and a copper nickel clad over a pure copper core that gives it a bright, silvery sheen. The mint mark, P or D, sits just behind Washington's ponytail, while proofs carry an S. On business strikes, sharp reading encircles the edge. If every element aligns, full, frosty devices, crisp reading, centered strike, you have a standard issue that any registry collector might prize in high mint state grades. Yet when any of those features wander, off-center strikes, filled letters, wrong planchets, you hold the key to unexpected value. One of the most talked about rarities for the 1996 quarter is the nickel planchet error. In these instances, a planchet intended for another denomination, often a 5-cent nickel blank, somehow fed into the quarter press. The result is a noticeably lighter, slightly thicker quarter with a pale gray tone and no copper core visible at the edge. Collectors value these wrong planchet quarters in the $150 to $400 range, depending on the eye appeal and how obviously the error presents. A fully struck example with clear nickel coloration and no post-mint damage will command the top of that scale. Another eye-catcher is the off-center strike, where the die fails to align perfectly with the planchet. An off-center 1996 D quarter missing 10 to 20% of the design will often sell for $50 to $150 in circulated grades, and can climb to $300 or more if the misalignment is dramatic and the remainder of the surface is pristine. The larger the unstruck border, the more dramatic the visual, and the greater the premium collectors will pay. Clipped planchets also make an appearance in 1996 issues. During blank preparation, some planchets were incompletely cut from the metal strip, leaving a curved blank that, when struck, displays a smooth, crescent-shaped missing segment. A small clip might be worth $75 in circulated grades, whereas a large clip, covering perhaps 15% of the coin's area, can fetch $200 to $350 if the strike is otherwise sharp. When a clip combines with a slight off-center, the value can multiply, as two errors on one coin doubles collector interest. Die cracks on 1996 quarters range from fine hairline fractures, often fading into the field, to bold raised lines that run from rim to device. Minor die cracks might add only a few dollars of premium, but a web of cracks forming a spider web pattern can boost value by $50 to $100 in circulated grades. In mint state, a multi-crack example graded MS65 with pronounced fracture lines could sell for $150 to $250, as error collectors prize the unique surface texture. Perhaps the rarest of the regular issue 1996 quarters is the filled mint mark variety. In a handful of Denver pieces, grease or debris filled the letter D before striking, resulting in a mint mark that looks shallow, incomplete, or even absent. A fully missing D mint mark, when authentic and not cleaned off, can bring $300 to $500 in higher grades, since those pieces are easily mistaken for Philadelphia issues until closely examined under magnification. When it comes to flawless business strikes, condition is king. Most circulated 1996 quarters trade at face value or up to $1 for lightly worn examples. At uncirculated grades, an MS60 might command $3 to $5. MS63 pieces often sell for $10 to $20. MS65 typically brings $25 to $50. Once you hit MS67, you'll see prices from $75 to $150. At MS68, where fully split lettering, complete hairline details, and mirror-like fields converge, typical auction results range from $200 to $400. A truly exceptional MS69 example, of which only a handful exist, can break $1,000 when it appears in a major sale. Proof collectors also found reasons to chase the 1996 S quarter. Standard proofs, clad strikes with frosted devices, sell for $3 to $8, depending on surface quality. Deep cameo proofs, with intensely frosted devices set against a reflective mirror field, tend to bring $20 to $40 in average condition. The real headline grabber is the PR70 Deep Cameo, perfect contrast and zero flaws. A handful of these have sold between $300 and $800 in marquee auctions, as DCAM contrast dramatically enhances visual appeal. Beyond grade and error types, interesting stories swirl around the 1996 quarter's place in numismatic history. As the final, regular, Washington quarter before public excitement shifted toward the 50-state quarters program, these coins represent the end of an era. Collectors who completed their sets in the late 1990s often fondly recall the search for high-grade 1996 pieces before the design gave way to state-themed reverses. That nostalgic cachet further fuels demand for top-grade survivors and unusual errors. For those evaluating a find, start by examining the edge for copper coloration or absence thereof, to spot wrong planchets, then inspect the mint mark under 5 times magnification for fill-in or clipping. Rotate the coin under a strong light to reveal die cracks or webbing patterns, and compare reading consistency to a known good specimen. If you suspect an error or exceptional grade, photograph both sides against a neutral background, note any anomalies in the legend or fields, and consider submitting to a third-party grading service. Even circulated error pieces can ignite spirited bidding among specialists. In conversation with fellow collectors, the 1996 quarter often sparks surprise. How could such a ubiquitous coin harbor rare treasures? The answer lies in the interplay of mass production and occasional minting hiccups. When billions of pieces roll through coining presses, the tiniest misfeed or debris speck can leave a singular record of that moment, one that decades later translates into tangible value. As you set aside your 1996 quarters for closer inspection, remember that the most valuable examples combine eye appeal, rarity of error, and high grade. A crisp MS-68 business strike with a cleanly clipped planchet or a mirror-bright PR-70 deep cameo proof both tell a story worth preserving. Whether you're an advanced collector chasing registry points or a casual enthusiast excited by pocket change discoveries, the 1996 quarter offers a compelling blend of history, mystery, and potential reward. With the vault door on 1996 now open, you've seen how that humble quarter can transcend its face value. In our final wrap-up, we'll weave together the lessons from both 1995 and 1996 issues, so you'll know exactly what to look for and how to turn everyday pocket change into a curated trove of collectible gems.